Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Jaya Radha Gopinatha Radha Gopinatha Shri Radhe Radha Gopinatha Radha Gopinatha Shri Radhe Jaya Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Jaya Lalita Vishaka Jaya Shri Radhe Lalita Vishaka Jaya Lalita Vishaka Jaya Lalita Vishaka Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Gopalnath Ji Jaya Gopalnath Ji Jaya Gopalnath Ji Jaya Gopalnath Ji Jaya Jaya Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Ananta Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Astitara Sata Shishimad Shila Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Brahmsakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Mathura Dhama Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Book Distribution Ki Jai Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Mandir Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pacharani Visheshas Paschattareshu Dharne. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, texts number 4 and 5. This chapter is called The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you and grateful for this chance. Today is Ekadasi. Ekadasi is a Devi. She's a goddess and she's called the mother of devotion. So I hope she will give birth to a lot of devotion in all of our hearts today, if you try to listen closely. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya, Narayanam namaskritya, Naram chaiva narottamam, Ram chaiva narottamam, Devim saraswatim vyasam, Vim saraswatim vyasam, Tato jayam udirayed, jayam udirayed. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu, nityam bhagavata sevaya, bhagavati uttama shloke, bhaktir bhavati naistiki. So this is verse number 4. Kakud minno vidanas Naso damitva, kakud mino vida naso damitva, svayam vare nagnajitim uvaha, tadbhagnamanam apigridyato gyan, Jagre kshata shastra vrita swashastrai Kukudmino vidha naso jamitva Mino vidha naso jamitva Svayamvare nagnajitim uvaha Tad Tatpagnamanam api grinyato gyan Jagnekshata shastravrita svashastrai. Please chant. Kudmino vidana sodamidva Ambare nagna jatim muva Tadbhagnamanam api gridyato gyan Jagnekshata shastra vitas svashastra Mino vidana sodamitva Vare nagna jitim muvaha Tadbhagnamanam api gridyato gyan Jagnekshata shastra vitas svashastra Mino vidana sodamitva Any ladies like to chant? Mino vidana sodamitva Namanam api gridyato gyan Shastra vitas svashastra Yam vare nagna jatim savaha Manam api gridyato gyan Okay, word for word. Kukudmina, bulls whose noses were not pierced. Avidanasa, pierced by the nose. Damitva, subduing. Swayamvare, in the open competition to select the bridegroom. Nagnajatim, Princess Nagnajiti. Uvaha, married. Tat Bhagnamanam. In that way, all who were disappointed, api, even though, grayataha, wanted, agyan, the fools, jagne, killed and wounded, akshata, without being wounded, shastra britaha, equipped with all weapons, svashastrai, by his own weapons. Translation: by subduing 7 bulls whose noses were not pierced, the Lord achieved the hand of Princess Nagnajiti in the open competition to select her bridegroom. Although the Lord was victorious, his competitors asked the hand of the princess, and thus there was a fight. Well equipped with weapons, the Lord killed or wounded all of them, but he was not hurt himself. Please repeat. By subduing 7 bulls, whose noses were not pierced, the Lord achieved the hand of Princess Nagnajiti in the open competition to select her bridegroom. Although the Lord was victorious, his competitors asked the hand of the princess, and thus there was a fight. Well equipped with weapons, the Lord killed or wounded all of them, but he was not hurt himself. Can I ask where this family is from? Where are you from? Yeah. Yeah, what's your name? Baladev. And you live in Brazil. So you all speak English or Portuguese? English? Okay. So you girls understand what's happening here, that when a bull gets a nose ring in his nose, maybe you've seen it, it calms them down, because bulls are very, very angry animals. So when they get a nose pierce, then it calms them down. So these bulls did not have pierced noses, and Krishna defeated them and won the hand of the fortunate princess. So you following the story? Okay, so now we go to the next verse, because there's a purport by Srila Prabhupada. Text number 5. Just to please his dear wife, the Lord brought back the Parijata tree from heaven, just as an ordinary husband would do. But Indra, the king of heaven, induced by his wives, henpecked as he was, ran after the Lord with full force to fight him. So we're going to talk about being henpecked and also being a fool. Okay, purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The Lord once went to the heavenly planet to present an earring to Aditi, the mother of the demigods, and his wife Satyabhama also went with him. There is a special flowering tree called the Parijata, which grows only in the heavenly planets, and Satyabhama wanted this tree. Just to please his wife, like an ordinary husband, the Lord brought back the tree, and this enraged Vajri, or Indra, the controller of the thunderbolt. Indra's wives inspired him to run after the Lord to fight, and Indra, because he was a henpecked husband and also a fool, listened to them and dared to fight with Krishna. He was a fool on this occasion because he forgot that everything belongs to the Lord. There was no fault on the part of the Lord, even though he took away the tree from the heavenly kingdom. But because Indra was henpecked, dominated by his beautiful wives like Sachi, he became a fool, just as all persons who are dominated by their wives are generally foolish. Indra thought that Krishna was a henpecked husband who only by the will of his wife Satyabhama took away the property of heaven, and therefore he thought that Krishna could be punished. He forgot that the Lord is the proprietor of everything and cannot be henpecked. The Lord is fully independent, and by his will only, he can have hundreds and thousands of wives like Satyabhama. He was not therefore attached to Satyabhama because she was a beautiful wife, but he was pleased with her devotional service and thus wanted to reciprocate the unalloyed devotion of his devotee. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksun Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Namaum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanshakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this verse and purport, what I'd like to speak about today is fools that are discussed in this purport, and also the concept of being henpecked. And I'd like to leave some room for discussion at the end. So if you have any thoughts, takeaways, questions, complaints, anything, please save them for the end and we can discuss a little bit. So this word is used in the verse Agyan. So maybe you remember this prayer we just chanted, Om Agyana. So when we are Agyana, it means we have no knowledge. So the prayer says, Om Agyana Timirandasya. Am I speaking too fast? Nina? No? Okay. Okay. They're from Colombia. So, over there. So we have Brazil, Colombia. Okay. So Agyan means without knowledge, and the beautiful prayer says that I was standing in the darkness of ignorance with my eyes closed tight shut, but my teachers, my spiritual masters, have rubbed the ointment of love on my eyes and helped me to see spiritual knowledge. So back to this word Agyan, without knowledge, it means a fool, right? So who is a fool? Am I a fool? Are you a fool? Yes. Right answer. So on this occasion, Indra was a fool because he forgot that everything belongs to the Lord. Fools like me, fools forget this. Minute to minute, every day, minute by minute, I'm forgetting that everything belongs to Krishna. I'm thinking my house, my clothes, my car, my friends, my everything, my husband, my kids. It's all mine, but I'm forgetting moment to moment that everything belongs to the Lord, so therefore I'm a fool. And there's a Sanskrit saying, maybe all you brahmacharis know this because you know a lot more Sanskrit than I do, but Atmavan manyate jagat. So this beautiful aphorism says that everyone sees the world to be like themselves. Have you ever noticed that? Like angry people tend to think everybody's angry at them. And people who are, in business, they're always looking to make a deal. Or, it goes on and on. So everyone sees the world to be like themselves. So because Indra was a very henpecked fool, he thought Krishna was just like him. But he should have known, right? He's one of the universal controllers. He's the king of heaven. He's in charge of thunderbolts and rain, as you know from the Govardhan Puja story. So he should have known, but he keeps forgetting. But I shouldn't objectify Indra so badly because I'm really quite like him myself. So we have to try to remember that Krishna is actually, when he comes to this world, he's beyond this world. So I was thinking, what other verse talks about fools? Maybe you know this verse, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 11. Avajananti mam mudha, fools. The word mudha means fool. Avajananti mam mudha manusim tanama ashritam param bhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Krishna says, fools deride me when I descend in a human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Yeah, so this is the state of foolishness in this world. Krishna comes to this world. There's a beautiful, other beautiful saying in Sanskrit that, you know how sometimes the moon is reflected in the water? If you see a lake or an ocean, sometimes the moon is reflected. So there's this Sanskrit aphorism that says that, is this ringing? Yes, is that better? It's all right? Okay. It says that when the moon is reflected on the water, sometimes the little fish think the moon is one of them, right? So when Krishna comes to this world, people think that he's under the laws of material nature, that he's a common man. But he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He conducts creation, maintenance, annihilation in the cosmic manifestation. So how can he be ordinary, right? Although he likes to play in human-like pastimes, like this one, right? He likes to play like he's being controlled by his wife. So Indra, as a fool, is seeing Krishna to be like himself. Krishna is posing as a henpecked husband. Krishna likes to pose as a coward, running away from the battlefield. He has a famous name in Gujarat. They actually worship Krishna. I love this temple, Dakor. Any of you been to Dakor? Yes. So nice. Are you from Gujarat? No. But you've been to Dakor? He's got those beautiful black eyes. Yes, really eyes. He's like a lotus. And so he's worshipped for running away from the battlefield. Ranchorai, yeah. One thing I like about that temple is all the men are making garlands along with the ladies. Wow. Very nice. But or when he's Arjuna's chariot driver. A driver is a servant, right? The passenger is telling the driver where to go. So Krishna likes to play like that Arjuna, his great devotee Arjuna, can tell him what to do. So these are his charming pastimes. So another thing about being a fool, remember Lord Chaitanya told Prakashananda Saraswati, when Lord Chaitanya went to Benares or Varanasi, the impersonal sannyasis were all gathered together, but Lord Chaitanya didn't like to hang out with them. But he got an invitation, so he thought this is an opportunity to try to teach them a little proper philosophy. So when he went there, he washed his feet, because in India it's pretty dusty, so people like to wash their feet before going into the temple. There's no foot wash here though, right? I haven't seen one. But anyway, so he was sitting there in that kind of considered dirty place where people wash their feet. And the head of all of those sannyasis, impersonalist sannyasis, came to Lord Chaitanya and said, well, first of all, the impersonal philosophers, they're seeking to merge into Brahman, the light, the Brahmajyoti. So when they saw Lord Chaitanya sitting there, he was manifesting this dazzling light of Brahman coming from his body. And this is the goal of their practice. So they all really, really got attracted just seeing him, yet he's sitting there in this kind of dirty place. So the head of all the sannyasis went to him and said, why don't you join us? Why do you stay away from us? Why are you sitting in this dirty place? And he took him by the hand and said, please come and sit with us. And then he said, why are you just chanting and dancing out on the street like a fool with a bunch of sentimentalists, women and children? Why don't you come and discuss Vedanta with us? And so Lord Chaitanya, this is where the fool part comes in. Lord Chaitanya said, well, you see, my spiritual masters saw me as a fool, so I'm not really qualified to study Vedanta like all of you. But in fact, Lord Chaitanya was the greatest scholar who defeated the conquering, Digvijay Pandits, so he had an immense reputation before coming there of being a great scholar. But he's saying my spiritual master considered me a fool. So I would say that a sincere devotee feels like my spiritual master is right by my side at all times. So if my spiritual master, and also a sincere devotee, has humility, so if my spiritual master considers me a fool, then I should consider myself a fool in all circumstances, because my spiritual master is always right by my side. So this is the humility of the path of devotion. One devotee came up to me this morning, I don't know where she is, but she said, I made cheesecake yesterday. Would you like some cheesecake? And I said, today is Ekadasi. But I told her, I did that once to Prabhupada. I asked Prabhupada, can I make you some bread? And Prabhupada said, bread on Ekadasi? So in this way, we are fools before our spiritual master. But so, so what about this idea of henpecked? It's kind of an archaic word. I mean, nobody would really go out on the street in Mumbai or the US or Brazil or Colombia and say, use the word henpecked. It's pretty strong. So I looked it up. The definition of henpecked is someone who is continually criticized and given orders by one's wife or female partner, typically used by a man. So, that's what henpecked means. So actually, Krishna really enjoys taking orders. Like a man who is henpecked, he doesn't like taking orders from his wife. He doesn't like getting criticized by his wife. Any wife, you can try it sometime and try instructing your husband in Krishna consciousness and see if he likes it. Mine does not, So, but Krishna actually enjoys taking orders from his devotees. Arjuna on the chariot, and what about Radharani in Vrindavan, right? Radharani is in an angry mood, it's called man. She's pouting, Krishna's trying to touch her, and she's saying, no, get away from me, and all of that in their pastimes. So here in this pastime, Satyabhama, who is actually in Vrindavan, is Radharani. So when Krishna comes to Dwarka, Radharani comes to Dwarka in the form of Satyabhama. So Satyabhama, she wants this Parijata tree that previously only existed on the heavenly planets. Now you can find this Parijata tree in Mumbai, right? So it's a really very fragrant tree. Someone was telling me the other day that she remembers when she was... So the thing about this Parijata flower is, as soon as the sun comes up, all the flowers fall onto the ground. So you have to catch the flowers before the sun comes up. So she was telling me that when she was a little girl, she used to shake the tree and get all the flowers off and then take them and share them with all the neighbors. There's a whole story behind that, but I won't get into that. But it's if you get a chance to see a Parijata tree, I don't know if they have, anybody know if they have them at Govardhan Eco Village? I don't know. But it's a beautiful tree. It's white with a little orange center. So this is Krishna's pleasure pastime. He likes to be kind of bossed around, you might say henpecked, by his devotees and controlled by his devotees. Radhanath Swami always likes to talk about how Krishna is a prisoner in the heart of his pure devotees. So in this purport, it's mentioned that he's not getting this, kind of stealing this Parijata tree from heaven for Satyabhama because she's so beautiful. No, it's because he was pleased with her loving devotional service. So if you're a lady and you're beautiful and you're proud of your beauty, that would be foolish. Or if you make beautiful garlands for Gopinath and you're proud of making beautiful garlands, that would be foolish. Because actually all talents, all abilities, all beauty, all strength, all wisdom, all renunciation, everything comes from Krishna, right? So Indra should have known, but he keeps forgetting. We all keep forgetting in this material world. That's part of being covered by the modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Passion and ignorance are more covering, and goodness has a little bit of transparency, but still we get covered by all three. Pride covers us. So here's another verse from Bhagavad Gita. Bhogaishvarya prashaktanam taya pahrita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhir samado na vidiyate. So this verse explains when we're too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, opulences and bewildered by them, like Indra, often like ourselves, then what happens? The resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So we have to be simple, sincere, humble, without ulterior motive. Radhanath Swami said that simplicity, sincerity, humility are the digestive enzymes. Isn't that great? These are the digestive enzymes for digesting transcendental knowledge. Otherwise, this is all beyond us. We can hear and listen, but we won't really get it unless we are situated in humility, simplicity, and sincerity. And what happens is when we're too attached to sense enjoyment and material stuff, and it's pretty difficult when you come to India and there's so many beautiful outfits and saris and jewelry. It can get pretty bewildering, you know. But anyway, what happens is the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place when we're too attached, when we're bewildered by pride. We become deluded, we become attached to, when we're proud, we become attached to, one thing might be internet gossip. That's a big addiction. Other addictions, so many addictions, workaholic, alcohol, drugs, shopping, what do they call it? Shopping remedy or something? Shopping, I forget what it's called. Anyway, all these things are different kinds of addictions. And Krishna says in this first one, okay, so there's another verse where Krishna says when we become attracted, when we become covered by pride, what happens is we become covered and we become attracted to demoniac or atheistic views. And then he says, in that deluded condition, our hopes for liberation, our fruitive activities, and our culture of knowledge are all defeated. That's a really, really heavy verse if you want to look it up, 9th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, verse 12. But what's even more heavy is what Srila Prabhupada says in the purport. He says, listen to this. Okay, hold on to your seat. Prabhupada says, there are many devotees, he doesn't just say one, he says many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, but at heart do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the absolute truth. Heavy, right? Then he says, for them, the fruit of devotional service, going back to Godhead, will never be tasted. So I think we have to really look deeply into our hearts and see, is this me? Is it you? I'm hearing all the time Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the absolute truth. Am I accepting it? Do I believe it? Am I deeply praying and considering my motivations in Krishna consciousness? Am I doing this Krishna consciousness to get some big position or respect? Or am I praying to see and try to weed out the weeds of my anarthas? You know this word anartha? Artha means real interest. Anartha means unwanted things that I don't want. So these weeds in the heart are called anarthas. These are the things that block my devotional creeper from blooming with beautiful fruits and delicious fruits and fragrant flowers like the parijata. So we have to really, as we're practicing Krishna consciousness, we can't just be on automatic pilot like some puppet, you know, just chanting like in an automatic way without any prayer. So we have to be really looking into our hearts. And what happens is when we're doing devotional service, serving the deities, chanting the holy name, doing kirtan, what happens is we start to see, Krishna helps us, things start to bubble up and we start to see what we're doing wrong. So we're not supposed to just stuff it back down and pretend. We're supposed to really look, like take a microscope to it and really look. What is this that's in my heart that's blocking my devotional service? Why am I not making proper advancement in Krishna consciousness? So this is the mercy of the holy name when those realizations come up, and those are times when we have to pay special attention. So yeah, am I thinking I'm becoming liberated, but because I have an impure mentality, which is called in Sanskrit avasuddha buddhayo, and I have my imagined superiority. I'm a rich householder, I'm a beautiful woman, I'm a brahmachari, I've been here 20 years, I know so many Sanskrit verses. Whatever I'm proud about, is that my imagined superiority? And is that so-called liberation really just in my mind? This is a beautiful verse from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vimuktamani. So some people consider that they are liberated, but they're liberated only in their minds. Why? Because their intelligence is impure, avasuddha buddhaya. Why? Because we haven't taken proper shelter of Krishna's most merciful lotus feet. So this Krishna consciousness process is meant to be a deep introspection. It's supposed to be, I've been reading, there's a beautiful new book. Tulsi Press is based here, right? Tulsi Press is based in Mumbai. So it's a reflection on the prayers of Kunti Devi and by Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj. And he talks about how we need to have a gratitude sadhana, a gratitude practice. So when I sit down to chant or when I do any service, I should be thinking with deep gratitude. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Lord Chaitanya, for sending Prabhupada to give us Krishna consciousness. So our hearts should be full of gratitude. Radhanath Swami says, without gratitude, love is impossible. And gratitude is, again, like I mentioned, those digestive enzymes. Gratitude is also like a fertilizer that fertilizes the seeds of bhakti in the heart. So when we're grateful, those seeds can grow very abundantly. Yeah? So the real question that I think we need to ask ourselves is, what am I holding as the real treasures in my heart? What's my real treasure? Or what are my real treasures? My box of gold jewelry at home that I hope doesn't get stolen, my 100 saris in my closet, what are brahmachari's treasure? All my Sanskrit verses that I've memorized, or maybe for guys it's a fancy car. So what are the real treasures that I'm holding as treasures in my heart? Kunti Devi calls Krishna, she calls Krishna a certain name, Akinchana Vitaya, which means that Krishna is the property of the devotee who considers that he has no other cherished property. So you may have a lot of property, like Maharaj Ambarish, right? He was a great king. He had a lot of stuff and a whole kingdom, but he was not attached to anything. He was attached to Krishna. So that's what we have to be looking at. Not that we all have to, throw our clothes in the fire and wear a loincloth and be a beggar. No, we can have stuff, but we have to know that my real treasure is Krishna, right? So my real cherished property is Krishna. Krishna is called the beggar's treasure. So one who has a secret treasure house in the lotus feet of the Lord, right? But if we're fools, we're intoxicated, inebriated by high birth, power, wealth, high education, beauty. Another verse of Kunti Devi, Janmaishwarya Shruta Shribir, Edamana Madakpuman, Naivarhatya Bidatum Vaitam Akinchana Gosharam. So if we are intoxicated, inebriated by high birth, beauty, wealth, power, all these things, then we can't approach Krishna with sincere feeling. That sincere feeling just doesn't manifest in the heart if we're so attached to these other so-called treasures. So I want to share a story with you that's really interesting. So, Sita Devi's father is named King Janaka, and he was the father-in-law of Lord Ram, and he appeared in the Treta Yuga. But believe it or not, there's a wonderful story about him in the Mahabharata, which was compiled a lot later. So this is from the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. So this King Janaka said something super wise, and I'm going to say what he said, and then I'll give the backstory. So he said, "My treasures are unlimited, but nothing here in this world is mine." He says, "My treasures are unlimited, but nothing in this world is mine. Even all of Mithila, which is his city, even if it all burns to ashes, nothing of my own will burn." Wild story, right? So here's the backstory. One day, Maharaj Janaka invited Sukadeva Goswami, who also seemed to have been around during the Treta Yuga, and he invited Sukadeva Goswami to visit him in his kingdom of Mithila. And Sukadeva Goswami was offered a seat of honor, and then he began instructing this Maharaj Janaka and all of the great Brahmin sages who are always gathered in the court of a king, because the king's very generous, he gives a lot of charity, so it attracts a lot of people who want charity, right? So they're all gathered in the court of this generous king. So the whole time, Sukadeva Goswami was just speaking to the king like this, as though no one else in the room was present. He wasn't even looking at the sages. He was just looking at Sukadeva Goswami. So these sages, because they had pride in their hearts, they were getting a little offended by Sukadeva Goswami's kind of ignoring them. And they were thinking that this guest, Sukadeva Goswami, he's trying to court the favor of the king to get some kind of generous reward or donation. And so Sukadeva Goswami, you've got to watch out for holy people who are so advanced like Sukadeva Goswami, because they can read your mind. So a good thing is to just assume that everyone you're talking to can read your mind. So be very gracious, humble, and sincere and simple. So anyway, Sukadeva Goswami was amused by this, but he was also pained by it, to see the pride and the conceit in these sages. So he was aware, he was hearing what they were thinking, actually. And so he was aware of their thoughts. And so just to glorify Maharaj Janaka and to protect the sages from committing unnecessary offenses, Sukadeva Goswami created a mirage. You know what a mirage is? You girls know what you know what a mirage? No? It's like a fake illusion. Like what? In the desert, like if you're ever driving on a desert road, sometimes you see water on the road. Yeah, and sometimes animals go chasing the water and they die because there's no water there. It's called a mirage. So Sukadeva Goswami, he created a mirage. And suddenly in this palace room, imagine if it happened here, the whole room filled up with this thick, acrid, choking smoke, filled the whole palace room, leaving no air to breathe. And these Brahmin sages, they all started running to the windows. And when they looked out the windows, they saw the whole city of Mithila was all engulfed in flames. The palaces, the citizens' homes, the ashrams, and the sages' solitary, simple huts, everything was on fire. And so the flames, they saw the flames now spreading right toward King Janaka's vast palace. And so these Brahmin sages were really panic-stricken, and they started running in all directions to go and save their stuff, right? Their meager belongings. And they were crying out, what about my deerskin? What about my loincloth? What about my gamsha? What about my kamandala? Kamandala was like a water pot. What about my stuff? They didn't have much, but they were attached to what they did have. And this is what Sukadeva Goswami wanted to illustrate by creating this mirage. So, interestingly enough, here's the king. He owns the whole palace. He owns the whole kingdom. He has a lot of stuff, but he wasn't attached to any of it. So he's sitting there unmoved, completely peaceful. And this is when he said, even if all of Mithila burns to ashes, nothing of mine will burn. And he was just inviting Sukadeva Goswami to go on speaking and speaking. So after a few moments, this mirage dispelled. It was no longer there. And all these scattered sages who had run out to save their stuff, they began returning to their seats in the palace room. And they were kind of looking down, embarrassed. Their faces, they couldn't look at each other, right? They're like, you ever get really embarrassed and you can't look at your brother or sister or your mom? Yeah, so they're like looking down. They couldn't look at each other because they realized that there was no fire except for the fire in their hearts of material desires, right? Which was still burning. So they came back and sat down, but they were too ashamed to look at each other in the eyes. And when they finally settled down after all this commotion and craziness, they saw that Sukadeva Goswami hadn't even moved from an inch. He was still sitting there instructing Maharaj Janaka. And both of them were completely undisturbed in their discussion. Amazing, right? And again, that's when King Janaka said, my treasures are unlimited, but nothing here in this world is mine. So in other words, where were his treasures? They were all inside his heart, right? Even if all of Mithila burns to ashes, nothing of mine will burn. So, okay, so let's go back to henpecked. What about for a man being henpecked or being bossed around by his wife? Or on the other hand, what if the wife is bossing the husband around? That would be bad also, right? One is not better than the other. They're both bad. You agree? Okay. You girls agree? Okay. So here's what Prabhupada's guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, said on this topic. He wrote an essay that was published in his Harmonist magazine, and it was called Relations Between the Sexes. And you can imagine he wrote this probably over 100 years ago, like maybe 1920s, 30s, something like that. So here's what he says. His English is a little bit academic, so try to listen closely. I'll try to read slowly. So he's talking about the Grihastha ashram, or married life in Krishna consciousness. So he says, the cardinal principle of Grihastha ashram is that no one may be the owner of any property or service of another. Everyone is only a servant whose activities are ever in the service of the Lord. Similarly, the sole object of everyone's service as the only master, only friend, only son, and only consort is Krishna, right? Then he says, marrying and giving in marriage do not give rise to any rights of a master, either to the husband or to the wife. Men and women are joined in wedlock for the purpose of serving each other in the performance of the joint service of Krishna. This is revolutionary talk, I think. Yeah. Sometimes people think I own my wife. She's my slave, kind of, right? Or a woman might think that about her husband, right? Okay. The wife is not an object of enjoyment of the husband, nor vice versa. They do not marry for gratifying their sexual appetite. They marry for pleasing the Lord, not for pleasing themselves. They choose for their partners only such persons who serve God better than themselves. They offer themselves to be accepted by their partners for the favor of being allowed to share in their superior service of Hari. Neither the husband nor the wife should claim the services of his or her partner on their own account. Both of them are only to offer their services if and when their partner is pleased to permit them to share their service of Hari. None of them can force their partners to serve them. Then he says, this system of household, you following this? Okay. This system of household discipline has its roots in the joint worship of the household deity by all members of the household. Isn't it beautiful here in the morning when so many people come from half an hour or an hour away or down the block or whatever just to worship Gopinath, and everyone's so happy offering flowers? Yeah, so that roots us in the service of the Lord, right? So then he says, the reason why the Guru does not ordinarily ask any person to enter the state of wedlock is that it is very rare to find anyone in this world who is willing to regard his or her wife or husband as worthy of his or her unconditional services. This is, however, exactly the only relationship between husband and wife that alone can be sanctioned by the Guru. What do you think? Quite revolutionary, huh? Spoken in maybe the 1930s or 1920s. So in conclusion, we talked about fools. We don't want to be fools, but we should always remain a fool before our spiritual master, who is always sitting by our side. So we should think of ourselves as fools, but we shouldn't actually be foolish and do stupid things, right? So that's one thing. Another point is that Krishna is never one of us, although he does enjoy exchanging love with his dearmost devotees, playing in human-like pastimes. Krishna is always Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatvamam Shantim Urchiti. So he's always the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor of everything. And guess what? He's our friend. So he's the most powerful, but he's also the most merciful at the same time. So who else should we worship but Krishna, right? So giving up our foolishness with this kind of realization, we can find peace and relief from the pangs of repeated birth and death in this material world. So, yeah, and another point that I mentioned, if we were bewildered by pride, Srila Prabhupada warns that the fruits of devotional service going back to Godhead will not be tasted if we're bewildered by pride. Krishna is only controlled by loving devotional service. So these are a few thoughts on this verse. Thank you all so much. And there's a little time, so does anybody have what was a takeaway for you? What was important for you? Or do you have a question or a complaint? Anybody have any thoughts they would like to share? Yes. How can we please Krishna by loving from our pure heart? Thank you. Such a beautiful question, and the answer is embedded in your question. We have to really try to see what we're doing wrong and seek to approach Krishna with a humble heart, a grateful heart. There's one beautiful poet from the UK, William Blake. He said, "A grateful heart is heaven itself." So if we can be worshiping Krishna with gratitude, with simplicity, not always thinking of all this stuff I need and the more stuff that I'm going to go get, simplicity, sincerity, without an ulterior motive, these are the digestive enzymes that help us digest all this knowledge we're hearing. Otherwise, it just goes over our heads, right? Or it goes in one ear, out the other. Do you ever read Bhagavad Gita and then close the book and think, I don't remember a single word that I just read? That happens a lot. So sometimes, because or I'll speak for myself, I am such a fool. Sometimes you have to read it 2 or 3 times or 4 times and really pray to understand. So it's a dynamic, the Christians use this word discernment, which is a beautiful word. We don't use that word so much, but we should always be sharpening the sword of our intelligence and our attention. You know, if I'm chanting and I realize I didn't hear one mantra in this whole 2 hours, and I need to, really try to, and then Krishna will help us if we're trying. If we're sincerely trying, he'll help us. But if we're just blasé going along, then Krishna will also be reserved. Like when Draupadi was trying to protect herself. Yeah, Krishna was hesitant. Is that helpful? Okay. You had a question?
Thank you. Hello. I think it's not working.
Okay, you can shout.
Hello. Yeah. Mataji, thank you so much for the wonderful lecture, first of all. I wanted to ask, because I'm curious to know, you mentioned that we should look within in order to know whether we are completely devoted or we think in our head and heart that Krishna is actually there.
Right.
So would you like to suggest a few techniques that could help somebody to become even better?
I think prayer is a very... So let me repeat the question. How do you... Can you phrase it again? How do we see? How do we look deeply in our hearts to see, to know that Krishna is really there? Is that basically your question? I think, again, we tend to do Krishna consciousness on automatic pilot rather than with intention and with prayer. So it's supposed to be a very conscious practice. We're supposed to, and if we see that we're doing it in an unconscious way, Krishna unconsciousness, right? If we see that we're doing it in an unconscious way, we have to really cry to Krishna and pray to Krishna that I want to see. Let him know that it's not that I don't want to see, I want to see. I want to stop pushing all that stuff under the rug. I want to see. And then see also, what can I do to simplify my life? Maybe I have 3 cars. Maybe I could live with 2 or 1. Maybe I have 100 saris. Maybe I could give some of them away. Whatever it is, it's not the stuff, it's the attachment to the stuff. So pray to Krishna to see, show me what I'm doing wrong. Because, I always had this question, who really cleans the heart? Do we clean the heart ourselves, or is it Krishna? Remember the story of Lord Chaitanya in the Gundicha Mandir? And he's cleaning and sweeping and gathering piles of twigs and branches and dirt. Everybody else was doing it too, all his disciples, devotees, but he was collecting much more than anybody else. So in fact, Krishna cleans our hearts, but we can be co-cleaners. We can want to help him. But if every time he shows us something that shouldn't be there in our hearts and we put it back, that's not helpful. So we have to really cry and pray and then see, how can I simplify my life? How can I go to that place of simple humility, sincerity? And is that helpful? Yeah. Somebody else have a question? Or yes? We should not be bewildered by... Radhanath Swami always likes to joke that there's a room full of 1,000 software engineers and nobody can get the microphone to work. Do you ever hear him laugh about that?
You said that we should not be bewildered by our pride, but then there are so many impulses and distractions. So how to not do that?
Right. I think it's a constant endeavor. It's not as though, okay, I cleaned my heart yesterday, or I cleaned my heart this morning by chanting a few rounds. Devotees think that Prabhupada said to chant 16 rounds. No, he didn't. He said to chant continuously, incessant chanting. So when you walk out of here and you go to work or go to school, that holy name should still be on our lips. That cleansing process should always be there. And at the same time begging Krishna to see, what am I doing wrong? Show me. Please kick out those stumbling blocks and anarthas, the unwanted things. So it's meant to be a very conscious process. But we keep forgetting, but Krishna will help us if he sees that we want help. So I suggest continuous chanting, incessant chanting. I'm trying for that myself, not so good at it. But you can always be praying, chanting Krishna's name, and begging to see. Is that helpful? Okay, you have to be patient. You have to be enthusiastic, but also patient, right? You read Nectar of Instruction? Enthusiasm, patience, both. Sometimes too much enthusiasm and with no patience can be craziness. Or too much patience, we fall asleep, right? Yeah. Anybody else from this side? Any questions or comments or complaints, or what was a takeaway for you? Anybody have a takeaway that was important here? Someone have? Yes. It's always nice when the women have more questions than the men, I think.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Usually they're so quiet, so thank you for asking questions.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for the very beautiful lecture. Mataji, one question was that as you said that Mahaprabhu also said feel, and we also should feel that the spiritual master is also right by our side. So how do we realize this theoretically, like I say, but how to understand and feel every moment that spiritual master is with me?
That would be a function of being conscious, right? And it would be a function of being grateful, right? If I'm taking everything for granted, intoxicated by Janmaishwarya Shruta Shribir, if I'm intoxicated, then gratitude is off my radar, appreciation is off my radar. So to be conscious, it's a function of gratitude and prayer. Gratitude is like the midpoint between spirit and matter. If we can become grateful, we start to delve into the realm of the spirit. Because all of the prayers, all of the appreciations of Krishna and Srimad Bhagavatam, Arjuna's appreciation of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, this is all out of gratitude. We don't use the word gratitude so much, but it's actually the midpoint. If we can become gratitude, then we're entering the realm of the spirit. And we can start with something very small. You know, when you come into the temple to offer your obeisances, you can say, "Thank you, Prabhupada. Without you, I would have just been going on in a mundane life, you know, no matter where we're from." So, gratitude, becoming conscious. I wanted to say one other thing. Any other questions or comments or anything? I know everybody likes to hear stories of Prabhupada, so I was thinking, is there some story of Prabhupada about pride? So if you listen to Prabhupada's room conversations, sometimes you hear him say under his breath, very quietly, I think this is a Bengali saying, but he'll say, "Big monkey, big belly." So the whole saying is, it's a little archaic, so let me say it for you. It's about Hanuman, right? So, big, big monkey, right? He's big. Big, big belly. So the point is someone's imitating Hanuman. Maybe he's got a big belly. But if he tries to jump over to Sri Lanka, Ceylon, the old name for Sri Lanka, Ceylon jumping melancholy. So if he tries to jump to Sri Lanka like Hanuman, he will be melancholy, he will be defeated. So Prabhupada used to use this phrase talking about his big men. You know, sometimes you hear him saying in these room conversations, "Big monkey, big belly." You know, and he's making fun of someone who's in his service who's become a little puffed up or proud. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that. Any other points, questions, comments, complaints, takeaways? Anything you don't agree with? Okay, thank you all so much for being here. Hare Krishna.